Have you ever found out your therapist is dating your ex at a yoga class? So I found this therapist, Sophie, downtown after my ex, Rachel, finally broke me. Rachel had spent 2 years controlling everything about my life. What I wore, which friends I could see, even what I ate for lunch. She'd guilt-trip me whenever I tried to do anything without her, saying stuff like how she thought we were building a life together and I was being selfish. It took me forever to realize this wasn't normal relationship stuff. When I finally left, I was a complete mess. I couldn't make decisions about anything. Like I'd stand in the grocery store for 20 minutes trying to pick cereal because Rachel always decided that stuff. Sophie seemed perfect when I first met her. She was this calm woman with these really kind eyes who worked out of this little clinic downtown. The waiting room always smelled like lavender and had these soft chairs that made you feel safe. For 3 months, I spilled everything to Sophie. How Rachel would throw fits if I hung out with friends, how she'd go through my phone and delete numbers, how she convinced me my family didn't really care about me. Sophie would nod and take notes, asking really good questions that helped me see how messed up everything had been. But around month 3, Sophie started acting weird during our sessions. Like when I mentioned how Rachel absolutely hated anyone named Sophie, calling it a basic white girl name. Sophie's pen actually snapped in her hand. She tried to play it off, but I saw her fingers shaking. Another time I was telling her about this huge fight Rachel and I had at her family's beach house in Delaware. I was describing how Rachel screamed at me for talking to her cousin too much, and Sophie suddenly interrupted to ask if we could focus on my current feelings instead. She never cut me off like that. The weirdest part was when I mentioned how Rachel always wore this specific perfume that smelled like vanilla and jasmine. Sophie touched her neck and looked uncomfortable, then quickly moved to a different topic. I started noticing Sophie knew details I hadn't told her yet. Like when I mentioned Rachel's job at the marketing firm, Sophie asked if she still worked there before I said where Rachel worked. When I looked confused, Sophie claimed I'd mentioned it before, but I knew I hadn't. Last week, my friend invited me to this yoga retreat 2 hours away. It was supposed to be relaxing and help with my anxiety. We're doing introductions when someone walks in late and quietly sets up her mat in the back corner. It was Rachel. My stomach dropped, but I figured I could handle seeing her for one class. Then another person walked in right behind her and introduced herself to the group as Melanie, Rachel's girlfriend of 6 months. It was Sophie. Only she wasn't Sophie anymore. Same face, same voice, but calling herself Melanie and holding Rachel's hand like they'd been together forever. I left that class so fast I probably left skid marks. My hands were shaking as I drove home, trying to process what I'd just seen. Had my therapist been dating my ex this whole time? Had Rachel been telling her things about our sessions? The next morning I called the clinic and asked to speak with Sophie's supervisor. The receptionist sounded confused and said there was no Sophie working there. I described her and gave them her office number. They put me on hold for like 10 minutes. When they came back, they sounded really concerned. Turns out Sophie wasn't licensed and had never been part of their staff. Her real name was Melanie, and she'd somehow gotten through their intake process using fake credentials. She'd been taking on private clients under a fake name, and the clinic had no idea. They said I wasn't the first person to call asking about her. Apparently, she'd been doing this for months, targeting people going through breakups and collecting information. The clinic said they were involving the police and offered me real therapy with an actual licensed therapist. They also said Rachel might have been feeding Melanie information about me to help her seem more insightful during our sessions. I felt so violated.